Thank you for being with us today. My name is Dina Ibrahim. I am the Executive Director of the California State University Entertainment Industry Initiative, now known as the Entertainment Alliance. We work with 23 Cal State campuses, CSU campuses throughout California to connect our campuses to the entertainment industry. It is my pleasure to honor to be moderating today's panel. Very, very distinguished group of folks who are going to be talking about investing in diversity. Why diversity matters to the entertainment industry, what is being done about it, and what is the extent of the issue, both in entertainment and in education. So without further ado, I will do a quick introduction of our panel. Directly to my left is Tim McNeil. He is the Vice President, Creative Talent and Inclusion at Disney ABC Television Group. He's a veteran of programming development, and he transitioned into talent development when he joined Disney in 2006. And now he is working in creative talent, and he works very, very closely with the National Latino Media Council, the National Hispanic Media Coalition, and many others. And he serves as a primary liaison between DATG and diversity-related coalitions. He works with nonprofit art institutions and entertainment industry guilds. He leads the strategic planning for the company's diversity agenda. Nate Thomas is a professor at CSUN, California State University, Northridge. He is a professor of film production. Nate Thomas has directed and or produced numerous film projects, including award-winning PBS documentaries, TV commercials, public service ads, and feature films. Mr. Thomas won a Sony Innovator Award in recognition of his film work and completed an independent feature film, East of Hope Street. He directed the urban drama, which was co-written and co-produced with a longtime friend, Tim Russ, of television's Star Trek Voyager fame. The film is a real-life story of a teenage Latina who comes of age while struggling to survive the abuses of home, the inner city, and an overburdened child protection system in an LA most of us never see. But he, most importantly, helps poison the young minds of the future, like us professors. Next up is Darnell Hunt. Darnell Hunt is director of the Bunchy Center for African American Studies at UCLA. His research interests include race, media, and cultural studies, and as director, he manages several research projects on the experiences of African Americans, as well as a major project focusing on the issue of diversity in the Hollywood entertainment industry. So Dr. Hunt is the expert on diversity in Hollywood. You should absolutely check out their Hollywood diversity reports, Making Sense of the Disconnect, which chronicles the continuing severe underrepresentation of minorities in television and film, alongside the finding that diversity sells in an increasingly diverse America. You can subscribe to their website, Bunchy Center, that's BUNCHE, center.ucla.edu, and follow them to keep up with their developments on their research, which he will share today. Chris Eyre, did I pronounce that correctly, Chris?
Yep.
Is a filmmaker. He is a director-producer. He's an award-winning independent film and television director, producer of 15 feature-length films. Eyre's diversity in filmmaking is exemplified through his skills of moving between movies made for TV, feature-length documentaries, theatrical feature films, episodic television, and media content advertising campaigns. His breakout film, Smoke Signals, in 1998 earned him 2 prestigious awards at Sundance, the Audience Award, and the Filmmakers Trophy. People magazine has called him the preeminent Native American filmmaker of his time. We're honored that he is with us today. Professor Jolie Proudfit is a descendant of the Pechanga Band of Luiseno Mission Indians. Dr. Proudfit holds an MA and PhD in political science with an emphasis in public policy and American Indian studies. She is on the faculty at Cal State CSU San Marcos, and she is program coordinator for Native Studies. She serves as department chair for the newly established American Indian Studies Department. Dr. Proudfoot is also the director of the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center at CSU SM. And last but certainly not ever least, of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, COO and General Counsel of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, Gregory Geckner. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association is known for its philanthropy efforts and has donated over $27 million to various programs, particularly promoting diversity in entertainment and making sure that students get mentored in entertainment programs. And this year, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association gave an incredibly generous $2 million to Cal State Northridge to help students, particularly diverse students, enter the entertainment industry and receive mentorship and training. So they're doing tremendous work in that area. So without further ado, I'm actually just going to toss it right to you, Tim, to essentially talk about Disney and tell us a little bit about what you're working on there.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. The Walt Disney Company, as you know, is a huge global company. My focus is specifically with the Disney ABC Television Group, which consists of ABC Network, the Disney Channel, ABC Family, which is now called Freeform, and ABC Studios. ESPN is also part of the television group, but that operates independently from the rest of us on the creative side. And my focus really is on identifying and nurturing the next generation of creative talent behind the camera, writers, producers, directors, and in front of the camera, performers. And through a series of programs that my department manages, our job is to reach out into, our focus is on identifying diverse and underrepresented communities. So we try to spend time connecting with communities around the country, and first planting the seed of opportunity that if you want to work in entertainment, that's possible, and anything that you can imagine, any kind of job that you can think of, you can probably find that at the Walt Disney Company. So that's kind of the big hook that we throw out there. Our main focus for my department is, as I said, to identify those people who want to work on the creative side, who are interested in telling stories, and everything about the Walt Disney Company is about storytelling. So we're looking for those individuals that want to tell stories, and what we can do is help them to shape their storytelling into a format that works in the entertainment business.
Thank you.
Sure.
Professor Thomas.
Well, when we talk about diversity, and I've read all the studies coming out of UCLA, and I don't think anybody would refute what the study says and other studies. And I think one of the things that we try to do as educators is that we want to train that talent, so there isn't an excuse that they're not qualified people. When I went to film school, I'm a graduate of USC Film School 30 years ago. There were just very few people of color walking around at the USC Film School. So there could have been an excuse that there wasn't enough talent to fill those directorial jobs, the producing jobs. But now you really can't say that. At Northridge, we have a diverse pool over the years of talent. And thanks to the Hollywood Foreign Press for the last 20 years have been funding a fellows program, which contribute monies to the thesis films. And we have had students out of Northridge that have been finalists in the student Oscars. In 2014, one of our students, a Latina African-American mix, won a Directors Guild of America Student Film Award, and was the only undergrad there out of 7 other awards, were all MFA Chapman, MFA USC. So that's our trend at Northridge, is to make sure that we train the talent, and they're trained by scholars, but also practitioners. Most of our faculty are Writers Guild or Directors Guild members and working professionals. So we have even further partner with the Hollywood Foreign Press Association this year with a $2 million grant, as you mentioned. And $1 million of that will go to some upgrades of facilities, which already bear their names from over the years, some of our facilities, monies that they had contributed. But to make sure that the students are working with state-of-the-art equipment and facilities. But the other $1 million goes to a Hollywood Foreign Press Association Scholars Program, which we've just developed, which will recruit and support folks from diverse backgrounds, culturally diverse, racially diverse, folks that may not have had that opportunity. And in addition to helping them study with us, a part of the program is to give them mentorship, because that's important in this industry. Having people to help you make the transition into the business, because we have to face it, this business does operate on who you know. So that is kind of what we're doing at Northridge, is making sure we have a pool of talent that's trained and a group of talent that is mentored, and that we're able to help feed them to the industry.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, Dr. Hunt, you
Well,
are the expert on
I'm
this.
the expert, huh? Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and to participate in this discussion. So the Hollywood Diversity Report is in its third year. It debuted in 2014. It comes out every year around Oscars time, and for obvious reason. It's usually controversy related to diversity that week in February, anyway. The goal of the study really is to provide a bird's eye view of diversity, or the lack thereof, in the industry, and to give us hard numbers. This is not a new problem. This is a problem we've been talking about for generations, and unfortunately we haven't had comprehensive data on exactly what the magnitude of the problem is, where the problems are, what the possibilities are, what the best practices are, that type of thing. So the goal of this study basically was to take a snapshot every year of the entire industry, or as much of it as we could get. In fact, we look at over 1,100 TV shows, and there are that many if you count broadcast, cable, and digital platforms, which we do. So pretty much everything that's in production, in development, we look at, shows that are airing in that particular season. We also look at the top 200 films. We subtract out the foreign films and look at the domestically produced films. And what we're really interested in knowing is, what is the relationship between what's happening in front of the camera, behind the camera, that is in terms of the actors, the writers, producers, directors, etc., and the bottom line. I mean, ultimately, this is a money-making industry. It's about profit. It's about performance. Does diversity, in fact, sell? Or are some of the conventional wisdoms about what will sell and what won't, and we've all heard them, what doesn't float overseas, et cetera, how much of that is really true? So the goal of the study is really to test that and to try to intervene in the discourse that shapes business practices in the industry. So we're an academic institution, UCLA, and the Bunch Center is like a think tank. And normally when we do projects like this, we go to foundations for funding. However, for this project, we figured it made a lot more sense to go to the industry directly, because what we were looking for was a partnership with the industry, collaboration with the industry. We figured that if the industry had skin in the game, if they were actually a part of the production process of the report, even as we maintain our independence as a think tank, they're more likely to read the report, they're more likely to look forward to it every year, and to actually talk about it in the halls of their business. In fact, that's what's happened. So Tig McNeil, for example, has been a supporter for years. ABC Disney was one of the earliest supporters of this project. Time Warner, HBO, William Morris Endeavor, ICM, Overbrook Productions, Oprah Winfrey Network, Sony. I know I'm missing someone, but in any event, our goal was to have all the major players in the industry contribute a nominal amount. We're not asking for a lot of money, a nominal amount, because we do want to maintain our independence, but we also want them to be engaged with the project. And so part of the deal is we meet with their executives every year after the report's released, and many of the companies will ask us, like ABC Disney, run the numbers specifically for our programs, for our TV shows and our movies, and let's see how we do compared to the industry. And they take that information back, and I like to believe that ABC Disney is using it, because I think they've been leading the way in terms of a lot of the diversification, particularly that we've seen in television in recent years. So that's really the goal of the project, is to change the nature of the discourse, to attack conventional wisdoms and myths that have, retarded progress on the diversity front, and to provide the industry and advocacy groups, and we do work with advocacy groups, NAACP, the National Hispanic Media Coalition, American Indians in Film, and there are a number of groups we've worked with, Media Access Network for Asian Americans, to arm them with the numbers, to move forward with their agendas. But our goal is I guess, the producer of the numbers, as the academic institution that does that. And, it's been, I guess, gratifying for us to, maintain relationships with people in the industry and those who have a stake in the industry.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Eyre. I'm a filmmaker and chair of the film school at Santa Fe University in Santa Fe, New Mexico, green chili land. And, I come at it from a little bit different standpoint because I think we're still trying to get skin in the game, so to speak. I've combated that through making, my own work, about 15 feature films directed at NBC, Showtime, Miramax, other places. And like I said, I think we're still trying to get some skin in the game. Dr. Proudfit and I have worked on an initiative recently to bring a network from Canada into the U.S. to provide 24 hours, 7-day-a-week programming of Native content. It doesn't have to be made exclusively by Native people, but that there's Native content. When I look at things, you ask why diversity is important. When I look at reservations in this country and tribal youth, the fact that they're exempt from mass media in any way except for the fact that they're on horseback or wearing, loincloths is reason enough. We have the highest suicide, rate among youth in the world, and it's because we have lack of representation in mass media. If I were to put a Native person in a McDonald's commercial, the first thing they would say, well, how do you know he's Native or she's Native? Second thing might be, well, that's political. And it's because if you put a Native person on screen with the lack of Native people on screen, except for Ridiculous Six, then it's political. So, we're trying to still get into this game of building, networks and conglomerations of people that will support us saying, this is who Native people are in 2016. And for myself as a filmmaker, that's kind of been, my mantra, which is to make work as the artist. And then to diversify that, like Tim, you said, among as many different people as possible. Because everybody has a different point of view, whether it be Dr. Proudfit and myself as both tribal people, and I'm probably one of the only guild members that's enrolled tribally also. So, to me, it's about, doing the work and making the work, and I thank you for the study, because those statistics, as small as they are for our group, are critical to us understanding what's going on every year, and moreover, about what's going on in America, because we all know that this isn't about this group as much as it's about the people in Nebraska and Iowa and people that make up the heartland that just want to see us on horseback and not see us as 21st century, eclectic, unique, progressive people. And so, for me, it's about making the work. It's about having this dialogue about diversity and opening the conversation further and further, and hopefully getting people to change their minds and allow us to be more than, one principal role on Longmire, besides day players, and be above the line in some capacities. Have executives that are at companies in this industry, and that's changing. I think all these things are happening, but we've waited a long time. When you realize the very first images in this country, Thomas Edison's kinetoscope in 1894 was of the Laguna Pueblo people, for a penny in Times Square. That's how long we've been in the same paradigm of being satisfied by loincloths. Last of the Mohicans has been made 5 times, So it's, it's this same thing again. And, after a while, for me, it gets really tiring. So I'd rather see diversity in mass media that includes Native people today. So that's kind of my perspective on diversity.
What he said, just to include Native women. Thank you, women. We're kidding, but we're not. Chris and I have been working together for a couple of years now, and he's one of our board members for our California American Indian and Indigenous Film Festival that we run out of our campus. And we do 2 days on our campus, and then we do the final day at my home tribal community, which is the Pechanga Band of Luiseño Indians. And if you haven't heard of us, you've been living under a rock, right? We are the major sponsors for the Lakers. This has all happened in my lifetime. 20 years ago, the majority of the people on our reservation had outhouses. This is California. So yeah, we're waiting to have a seat at the table and skin in the game, and a little frustrated. As a parent, it's so critically important for our kids in particular to see themselves as human beings first and foremost. Did you know there are 147 public K through 12 schools in California with Indian mascots? 147 in California, not Kentucky. Wow. Right? California. We have some of the most politically astute, economically sound tribal nations. We have 110 federally recognized tribes in California. We have the entertainment industry here. We have about 80 tribes that are seeking recognition, and we have the 2 largest urban Indian populations. Why are we not visible? And we know we're interesting. The industry was made off our backs. Over 5,000 films, albeit they were Westerns, and they created a certain trope that we're still trying to live down. And so when we do introduce ourselves and say we are Native peoples, people usually respond to, really? You don't look like an Indian? Oh, do you mean Pocahontas? And the Disney version at that? Well, we all would love to look like a combination of Naomi Campbell. Yeah, the artist who drew her. He used her, as well as a Filipina model, to make this super native, sexualized 11-year-old. Can we move beyond the stereotype? And I know my daughter, who's half Caucasian, is going to feel it from both ends, but it's the diversity of who we are. We have wonderful stories to tell, many emotions. We're not just stoic. We're not just sexy. We're not just heroic. We're not just scary. We're all of these different things. And so what I have done as a university professor, I've been a professor in the CSU now for 21 years. I'm a 3-time CSU tenured professor, the only person I know and an American Indian from California. So I like to, again, that's not a stereotype we hear. And may I add to my bio, I just got appointed to President Obama's administration on his advisory council, which
Fantastic.
I was just there last week to talk about these very issues. And as I was meeting in the Office of Education, and I was saying, why is it that American Indian students have to go to school and deal with the mascot issue? And I'm not talking just about sports teams. I'm talking what happens in kindergarten, where we dress up our kids as pilgrims and Indians, and we tell them to pick a side. Right? I'm talking about what we do to our children in the 4th grade here. And we make them build missions. Could you imagine having Jewish children build concentration camps and say things like they wandered there? That's in our books, folks. And when you think I'm talking about the past, you all know who was canonized this last September. We barely made it out alive. And they canonized him? So these are real issues for our people. And again, it's not just focusing on the past. Like Chris said, we want to be seen in the contemporary. I mean, we're really funny. That's one stereotype I think is true, our humor. Right? We gotta laugh. because if we didn't, we would be really miserable. But it's about content creation and about creating content that is authentic, culturally relevant, culturally sensitive. And again, we don't always have to be the heroes. We could be the villains too, but make it relevant. Every tribal person doesn't come from some kind of wolf pack. That's the new stereotype, right? Screenplays written by non-native folks who Googled something. I mean, the Harry Potter fiasco, the new stereotypes that that's going to create for our population and our community. Instead of making it up, call us. Work with us. We started the Native Networkers. My colleague Heather Ray, our colleague, she couldn't be here this afternoon. She's a producer, and some of you might know Heather. But Chris and I and Heather started this together. And we were so fed up with the lack of inclusion, the lack of conversation. So we wrote an article that you might have read in Variety that came out the week of the Oscars called Birth of a Conversation, based on the film Birth of a Nation. Can we just talk about American Indians, please, and include us in the dialogue? Right? We cannot make change without that. But also, it's critically important for our community. It's not just about entertainment. For American Indians, Congress does not pass laws against caricatures or people that no longer exist. And so when we're constantly portrayed or perceived as being dead, buried, or in the past, it's no wonder educational inequities exist, healthcare inequities. So as a political scientist, people often ask me, why do you do so much work in entertainment and media and film and industry? Ask any politician how critically important the media is. But for Indians, before we're considered a racial group, we're the only group of people in the United States deemed with a political status and a political group. So all things are political for us, and for us to be portrayed as living human beings is critical to our survival.
I'm sorry, after that I have to talk about money, but...
Well, we need some.
No, it's important, but what you say is also very important, but I'm going to change the subject mostly to talk about supporting education. As you know, I'm with the HFPA. We're a group of mostly foreign journalists, so most of our members come from someplace else all over the world. We're mostly known for the Golden Globes, but we do have a substantial philanthropy effort, and most of it's been, or a large part of it's been focused on education. I think our first grant about 20 years ago was actually to Cal State Northridge, and that's something that we think is very important, something that we plan to continue to do. We have supported all of the Cal States, UCLA, most of the other film schools in Southern California, Cal Arts high schools, because obviously, high school is important in these areas as well. We have been doing a lot with scholarships and fellowships, trying to focus on individual students and supporting them. Through 2014, we've given money for 1,329 scholarships and fellowships, trying to make differences in individual lives. As was talked about by Professor Thomas earlier, we have a program just this year, a major grant program with Cal State Northridge of $2 million. The year before, we did one with LA City College, also $2 million. We picked those two schools in large part because of the diverse student bodies and because of the importance of helping more people get into this business. We all know it's a very tough business to get into. There are a lot of people who want to get into entertainment. You've got to have not just the right connections, but the right training. And to do that, you have to have the right equipment, the right connections. You have to be able to get internships and so on. So what we're trying to do with these programs is to support these schools and to support the students that go through them. The money that we're giving in these major programs is focused on a couple of things. First of all, it's focused on equipment. when we went into LA City College, we found that they were using donated equipment from about 30 years ago. And you know, in this business, that things change every 6 months. You can't really learn and get a job in the industry when you're trained on equipment that's 30 years old. So we think that's a really important effort. We're not into building buildings; those other people give money for. But we think that it's very important to equip the buildings so that the students can learn on current technology. And then it's individual support of students. As I said, we've given a lot of money for scholarships and fellowships. We've been establishing endowments for scholarships and so on. So that's really the focus of our programs right now, is diverse populations, student support, and making sure that people at institutions with diverse populations have current equipment.
Thank you. Thank you for your support, and thank you to all of our panelists. I do want to also welcome our audience online. We are webcasting this session live to the 23 campuses of the CSU system and beyond. So I'd like to take some time to open this up to conversation. I'm wondering if there are any questions from the audience that you may have for panelists. If not, I have plenty of questions myself. But I do know to pause for a few minutes to let people think about their questions. Yes. I will repeat your question so that the audience can hear it, unless you'd like to step up and take the mic.
I would say let's talk. We get applications every year. Unfortunately, the grant application deadline for this year has passed, so we're already looking at applications. But I'll put you in touch with our grants officer. We do support a lot of the Cal States, one program or another.
Thank you. The question was from a professor at Fresno State about the access to grant opportunities for campuses and programs that are outside the LA metro area. Any other questions from our audience?
Could I respond to that?
Please.
I would like to recommend that you look at some private foundational funding and support outside of this particular group. We just received $250,000 from the Keck Foundation, K-E-C-K, to create an American Indian digital media program. And the purpose of that program, it just started this January, is that we create the next generation of content creators working with American Indian digital media film professionals like Chris Eyre and with our local tribal communities. We have 18 reservations in our county alone and about 35 tribes in a driving distance. And so we are using that money to buy equipment, to train our community members to work with our faculty who are experienced in this area, and to bring in subject matter experts so that they can use the equipment to tell their own stories, but to do so in a way that also protects their culture. Because as we know, with many of the software programs, for example, I won't name any names, but once you put something online, you pretty much sign things away. And for tribal communities, we're very, very concerned about intellectual property. We've had a lot of things taken from us, so we're not very trusting, so to speak. But we also don't want to put our culture in harm's way so that people use it or misuse it. But we also realize that, young people have digital technology at their fingertips. So everyone's a filmmaker, so to speak. And so creating a set of core courses to make sure that our non-native faculty is trained in what we call native ways of knowing, and working with, like I said, our subject matter experts and tribal community partners will help create that next generation of content creators. So look into Keck.
Yes, sir. It's online.
This is the report. For those of you who haven't seen it, you can just go online, Google it, Hollywood Diversity Report, Bunch Center for African American Studies at UCLA, or my name, it'll come right up. The other thing you can do is go to our website, and it's there, I believe, on the front page. If not, there's a little search function. You can type in the name, and it'll come up, and it's available online in PDF format.
Yeah, there you go. I just Googled it, and it'll take a year to download over this Wi-Fi. Dr. Hunt, I'm actually curious in the portion of the report where you talk about diversity selling. Because I've had this conversation, the Cal State campuses are all majority minority.
Right.
And, it's very interesting speaking with industry executives. And, there's this whole tension between it's the right thing to do versus, no, this is actually going to help your company's bottom line. Could you address that?
Sure.
Thanks.
Well, that is the basic takeaway of our report. It used to be the moral argument was the argument to be made about why diversity was important. And it is a moral concern. I mean, it does affect the way we see other people. It does affect the way we see ourselves when we internalize images that are damaging. It is about our humanity. Unfortunately, that argument hasn't been very persuasive. The industry really hasn't moved a lot because of that argument. And so what we decided to focus on with this report series was the bottom line. In addition to doing the right thing, it's also the right thing for the bottom line. So what we find basically, and we've replicated this 3 years in a row, so what we're finding now is only going to become more true as time passes. This is not a fluke. Basically, we're talking about a society where about 40% of the population people of color, composed of people of color. And we're getting more diverse by 0.5% every year. In a few decades, we're going to be majority-minority. Women already constitute slightly more than half the population. You wouldn't know that, though, from television and film, particularly if you look at the leads and whose story it is, etc. So there's a disconnect out there between what Hollywood is producing, the way Hollywood is populated behind the camera, in front of the camera, and the people who are at home or going to theaters consuming. And so what our study shows is that when you do have TV shows that are diverse, and there are some, those tend to do better with audiences. In fact, if you look at every single TV show, all 1,100, and group them into intervals depending on how diverse the cast is, the shows that are 40% minority or higher peak in terms of ratings. In other words, they do the best compared to all shows. Unfortunately, most TV shows aren't very diverse, and guess what? They're relatively poor performers, but they keep making those shows. And we can talk about that later. I have a theory about why that's the case, and we talk about it in the report. The same is true in film. Box office. Films that are more diverse do better at the box office. In fact, the #1 film in 2014, the year we looked at, was Transformers: Age of Extinction. People of color bought 60% of those tickets. The film made $1.1 billion globally. I believe 6 of the top 10 films, people of color bought the majority of the tickets in 2014. It's probably even more true in 2016-17. It will become more true as time progresses. So the days of saying that we can't do diversity because it doesn't help, those days are just over. I mean, advertisers these days don't talk about the minority market. They talk about the market because minorities are the market. So I think Hollywood needs to kind of get the memo.
Can I comment on that? Oh God, this is probably in the early 1980s, but Benjamin Hooks, who's passed on, he was the first black commissioner of the Federal Communications Commission, and he also was executive director of the NAACP. And it's interesting, when I came out here for film school in 1980, they were still having the same conversation, lack of diversity. Right, so at some point, the conversation needs to stop and something needs to be done. But what he said, kind of ties in with what you're saying. He says, this industry knows dollars and cents, and what would really change is if those 60% of ticket buyers stopped buying tickets. So they're saying that he's saying that TV shows that didn't employ in front of the camera or behind the camera people of color, people of diverse backgrounds, both in front or behind, that we don't watch those shows, we don't buy those tickets, and then the bottom line goes down, and that's money. But we haven't been able to do that. We just haven't been able to do that, and the advertisers listen to that. But, you know, Native Americans, black people, they buy Charmin, you know, they buy all of the stuff that's advertised. If they stop and boycott that stuff, goes back to the Rosa Parks story. It wasn't about social, it was about dollars and cents. The majority of those riding the bus in Montgomery, they were African Americans. And when they all joined with her and refused to ride the bus, the bottom line is that the bus companies start losing money. That's when we were able to ride anywhere we want on the bus. So until that happens in this industry, I think that's what really needs to happen. And what Benjamin Hooks called it is like the blacklist. He called it the white list. TV shows that didn't employ people of diverse backgrounds. He said we should whitelist those shows and movies and not support them, and then you'll see really substantive change in this industry.
We're kind of going through a transition right now, and I think there's a cycle that seems to take place in the business. Back in 1999-2000, there was, in the broadcast television space, the fall launch that season, there was not one diverse series regular on any new show across all the broadcast networks. And as a result of that, there was a grand coalition that was formed from the Native American, African American, Hispanic, and Asian American communities, and they confronted the networks. And they spoke with a singular voice to confront the networks to say that you have an obligation to represent America because you use the public airwaves. And as a result of that, departments like mine and across all the other broadcast networks, we all now have these diversity departments. And so out of that came this opportunity for us to be at the table and try to change the conversation. And over the last 16 years, I think we've gone from that moral responsibility of do it because it's the right thing to convincing our executives to think about this from the business perspective and think about the bottom line of that. And I think we're at that point now where we're at the tipping point where I think all of these companies are starting to realize that it does make a difference when you use diversity in your creating your content. And you're starting to see it. I think we still have a long ways to go, but I'm proud to say that for the company that I work for, that it's a universal conversation. All of our executives on the creative side speak about diversity as a part of their daily business. It's not that add-on part of the conversation. Oh, by the way, we need to get a diverse actor or a diverse writer on this project. And as a result of that, we have very diverse content. We have the most prolific female content creator in the name of Shonda Rhimes, who drives the lion's share of the bottom line of revenue for our company at ABC. We have John Ridley, who created American Crime. We have Kenya Barris, who created Blackish. We have Nanachka Khan, who is the executive producer of Fresh Off the Boat. And these are all shows that are created by diverse storytellers and have very diverse writing staffs and talent in front of the camera that also represents the changing landscape of America. And this all came about because of these coalition groups that came together and confronted the networks and said, you have a responsibility. And from that moral argument, now we have the business argument.
You know, out of the 474,000 CSU students, 39% are Latino. And I don't want to leave that part out of this conversation. Maybe, Tim, you could talk a little bit about specific Latino initiatives that you work with
Sure.
as well, and how that all
You know,
fits in.
it's kind of playing Sophie's choice, and I think there is a responsibility that we have to support and nurture diverse talent in all diverse communities. but in particular with the Hispanic community, as it is the largest single minority community and growing. We do focus a great deal on that, and we work really closely with the National Hispanic Media Coalition, in particular, to identify storytellers through a writing program that we run with them. And we've been in business with the National Hispanic Media Coalition for the last 10 years here in Los Angeles. And prior to that, we ran a program with them that took place in Albuquerque. And out of that, we've had over 200 writers that we've developed that are now, out of those 200, we have over 50 that are working regularly in the business.
I'd just like to say it's kind of interesting when you talk about the bottom line, and that's really what you need to affect to create change these days. And I take that to heart that you mentioned that and bring that up. You know, for Native people, it's kind of a different phenomenon that I'm trying to figure out all the time, which is, you know, you have a show like Longmire or Ridiculous Six, and every year there's going to be Native content creations, but Native people never benefit from, you know, it being monetized, this idea of being a Native or the idea of culture. So that's kind of interesting to me. I think about, you know, if you were to take the Native talent off the table in the industry or unionize them, what would that do to the industry? You know, every year, I mean, you look at the Revenant, you know, he got, Leonardo DiCaprio gets up and talks about how much, you know, we love Indians and all this stuff, you know, which is great. But I'm just saying, you know, if you really want to talk, I mean, and I'm just, you're giving me ideas, you know, which is, you know, if you were to take all the Native, you know, players off the table, which, you know, most Americans don't seem to know their names, you know, that Indian guy, you know, the Indian girl, you know, that would be interesting too. I mean, because, you know, you're talking about the bottom line here. But I just keep saying to myself, we don't have the populist base that other groups have when you talk about, you know, Hispanic community. But one thing we do have is in the 2000, I think it was the 2000 census, the number one attribute that Americans ascribed to was the fact, besides Caucasian, that they had Native American blood. So, you know, many people in this room have probably Native American blood. And the question is, you know, how is it that we, as Native people, you know, put ourselves in positions in this industry, and maybe you're saying the best way is through, you know, the economics of it. And what happens if you take, you know, I know the names because I've worked with them, Adam Beach and West Studi and Graham, Tantu Cardinal, Sheila Talzi, all these Native players, and say, okay, we're going to unionize, and, you know, you have to make these kind of adjustments to have Native talent. I mean, I have no idea.
Can I just, quick follow-up. So one of the things that we're beginning to see, or at least we see evidence for this, is that in many ways our society is becoming so diverse on many dimensions. I mean, there's race, there's gender, sexual orientation, class, age. People want to see on the screen a reflection of the realities they experience. I mean, and so we're finding when we look at household demographics in terms of ratings that, you know, we're finding all kinds of things that you might not have expected in terms of what is most popular for different demographics. Moral of the story is Native Americans, American Indians, you know, Asian Americans, African Americans, Muslim Americans. I mean, there's a place for all groups in this amazing tapestry, and I think people want to see that. It makes for more interesting stories. People want to know about other people's stories, and not necessarily just told by someone who's a tourist. I mean, I think the people who are part of the community need to be in that process as well. We need writers' rooms that are very diverse, that are able to, you know, sketch characters in ways that resonate with the realities of those communities. And I think we're seeing that pays off in the short term and the long term in terms of where America is and where America is going. So I think the more we do that, and the more the people who are doing that, who are seeing that in the industry, I think they're reaping the benefits, and I think others are going to follow eventually. It's just a matter of making sure that narrative is known.
And in response to that, and in agreement with that, American Indians, although we're a smaller population, Boy, you guys love us. You like to Google us, dedicate websites to us, create whole fashion looks about us. I think you guys call it boho chic, right? We're the first environmentalists. So we know we sell items. Walk through a grocery store, and if you look at different ethnic groups selling items, you'll find that American Indians are doing it more than any other population. Yet, let's admittedly say that we're 1% of the population if you look at federally recognized tribes. But if you look at indigenous people in its totality, you're talking over 1 billion people with indigenous roots. So there is definitely a market, but I also want to be cognizant of focusing on the numbers game. Because I've heard, well, there's your 1%, so you have your 1 senator, or you have your 1 faculty member, or we have, 5 or 6 self-identified Cherokee princesses out there, so therefore, right? We're talking about authentic truth, reflection of self, seeing yourself. I think the tales are interesting. I think people would love to have a window into tribal life, tribal communities, American Indian households and families. You'll find that we're very similar to many other families, but yet very distinct and unique. But that would mean involving us, asking us, truly collaborating with us, and not hiring the one Indian person to represent all Indian voices. There's a reason that Chris and Heather and I started the company together. When we write, the 3 of us together, so that people can't dismiss, well, that's one Indian's opinion. You're talking a scholar, an award-winning producer, an award-winning filmmaker, all representative of different tribal backgrounds and communities. It's a lot harder to dismiss. And the numbers also, reports like that are great, but because our numbers are so small, we're often not adequately represented. So we have to end up doing our own studies and our own research to make our own argument. And we really need other groups to work with us, hand in hand, support us, make sure that we're not a last-minute addition to a program or a discussion point, right? Again, we're the country's first peoples, and I believe a group that is an untapped opportunity of storytelling. So I invite all of you to get engaged and do what you can to make sure that American Indians are represented in the media.
On that note, thank you very much to our panelists for being here today, for sharing your knowledge and your expertise, and particular thanks for financial support for diversity initiatives that is greatly needed. And thank you to all of you for attending today.
Disney Channel. There was paid internship.
Where
Undergrads,
is-
this is in 84. Undergrads got $400. And the grads got $6.
Yeah, I know the area. I don't.
Disney had the best internship. That's amazing. And they took as an intern, I worked under the production executive over a lot of the shows on the Disney Channel. Man, I flew to Canada. There was a show in conjunction with Canada that was on the Disney Channel. Man, I traveled. And so got to the point where the independent producers thought I was
You're from Fresno.
Wow, I was on the wrong track. In 1984, I graduated from UCLA, and I worked for, Ruben Cannon?
Oh, yeah.
And I made $200 a week.
You know, but still, that was still some money.
Yeah. Good, how are you? I don't have a car with me, but I can email you. Okay.
Yeah.
One time a year, do you use that long?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, she's pretty far down the road, so.
Yeah, definitely. Give me a call.
Oh,
Our
wow.
campus, we have 4% American American Indian student population, the highest of any public institution or private in the state. And we have a 12% military student population. So a lot of our American Indian students who are there that are not
Right,
from our
yeah.
local tribes are there because of the military. So we work
Oh, cool.
in tandem.
Pronounce your last name?
Representation.
Marengo,
You know, I
okay.
mean, American Indians have
Oh,
been
cool.
overly
All right, I'll shoot you an email and give you my information. Nice to meet
Very
you.
diverse in a lot of these cases,
Hi.
but we're not represented properly the way we'd like to do so.
Yes, I
Yeah, let's connect with Scott, definitely.
I only had two. I said I'm down on cards, but I got one for you. There you go, one for you. And then I just realized when I got started, I didn't bring no cards today. There. Is that right?
Oh, okay. Oh, cool, okay. Right.
He's a bodybuilder.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to
Okay.
talk with you more.
Well, I tell you what, you need to look at ours. The price is right.
Okay.
USC is up to 60, 70,000 a year.
Yeah, just email me. Let me know because
I know your president really well.
like that.
Yeah, have
You know, he's from NATO.
Okay, have me contact me.
CSU president.
Thank you.
From NATO.
This is fun.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, that was Native American Tradition.
Like the president went tonight, he wasn't in it. They were
Okay.
so they traveled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So he was out of town.
Yes. That's what matters.
Yeah, we have a 5,000 person mailing list. And yeah, I own a media company as well, so we can get it out.
Less so in the case of
Send it. Absolutely, yeah.
Some people were last year and CSU wasn't part of it.
No, we work together, so yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I just saw it.
Okay, good.
really?
Keep up the good work.
Well, it's still very experimental, right? I mean, I was just so glad that folks came. I mean, if you look at the panels we're up against at 2:30,
Yeah, no, with our digital media grant, that is so critical to us because it's the affordability and the isolation of tribal communities, looking at that, but that's also managing it and controlling it in a way because you don't want to just put it out there.
Well, the bottom line is
So yeah, digital platforms are critical to Indian country.
yeah.
Definitely.
no matter what, you
Look at
can't
this.
play
Our
around
stuff.
your doctors if there are no
Okay, cool.
people of color studying medicine.
Have you gotten the report or no?
Yeah.
Really,
Have you gotten the report? Yeah. California.
Yeah.
the technology, even the
Yeah, but the virtual reality, what is it called? I call it the Optimus Prime. You can see everything in 360.
Well, people don't know that.
Yeah, it's for us, for tribal communities, I would say stay stand clear. Because once you upload your content, they own everything. So we're not ready to do that yet. There's got to be some give and take. Yeah. So that's what I'm very conscientious about that. Yeah, because like I said, we're used to selfies. It's like being used for the brochure, but you get to the campus and you're like, well, where are the teachers? Where's the program?
Yeah, we just did that at UCLA too, but he actually has the faculty lines. Yeah, I mean, so he can basically barter with departments and encourage them to hire people that they wouldn't ordinarily hire.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, you just want to make sure that that there's collaboration, cooperation, there's agreements, there's mutual reciprocal benefits. Because yeah, I mean, I think that's a population that is
I was the
I mean, everybody claims love and support, peace and harmony, right? But it's like, show me the money. Yeah, frame it. Yeah. We have, and so we've never gotten reparations. They stole our land, took our land, and
Let me get you in touch with Sandra.
5 or 6 faculty
Yeah, we have the one show a year.
Jolie, I love your ring. That's pretty.
We've had a few
They had just started. I was in NYU.
Oh, yeah.
Just started. Just
So you're a young man. Yeah. He's an old man. Let's just call it what it is.
You know what I didn't even mention? Is it? Yeah, but you know, it's the same sexual. I think if you compare that and, I don't know what happened. Ethnic diversity.
Sexual orientation.